Okay, after the short break, we have a very tight schedule. Okay, so let's welcome Mr. Horace Lau, Senior Inspector, Cybersecurity Center of Technology Crime Division, Commercial Crime Bureau, Hong Kong Police Force. So his topic is cybersecurity landscape from the perspective of Hong Kong Police. So welcome, Horace. Thank you.
Okay, hello everyone. I think all of you have gone through a very valuable and a good time by the presentation of the previous speakers. And because my role is a law enforcement agency, so I think I will present the cyber security landscape in a different angle that you may not have before. Because we are Hong Kong Police and we have to deal with cyber security as well, and we have different point of view, different angle to look at cyber security. In this limited time for me, provided for me, and I will try my best to describe the Hong Kong cybersecurity landscape that you may be of interest. So a little bit background about myself. My name is Horace Lau again, and I'm working in the Hong Kong Police Force for 7 years, more than 7 years, and Technology Crime Division for more than 4 years. And it may not be a very long time, but to me, I witnessed the change of the cyber world very thoroughly, because at the moment when I joined the Technology Crime Division, the world is not so complicated. Yeah. So in my presentation, I will break into two big parts. And the first part is I want to take this opportunity to introduce the Cybersecurity Center, or maybe the Hong Kong Police posture in cybersecurity. And then I will have a brief walkthrough on what's happening in Hong Kong right now about cyber attack, something like that, and give a bit advice to those organizations who want to protect themselves from the cyber threat landscape. So actually, cybersecurity is not a new topic for us, for Hong Kong Police Force, but because you know our name is Technology Crime Division, our focus previously was put in technology crime more. In the old days, when you use technology to commit crime, we will regard it as a technology crime, and we need to handle it by investigation, arrest, and put the offenders to the court, something like that. And after in the past few years, we witnessed the proliferation of technology, and more people are using technology right now. And say you will never have 1 hour not looking at your smartphone or computers. I think this is the habit of everyone in Hong Kong. So as more and more people are in touch with technology, they are more exposed to cybercrime as well, and provide more opportunity to the cyber criminals. So so that is very natural for us to see that the figures of cyber crimes increase rapidly year by year, and also our workload increased year by year as well. So with limited manpower, we can't do all the things, use all the efforts to do all the things. So another thing is that more and more new technology evolved, say digital currency, e-commerce, new approach, something like that. As a police, we need to know everything, because whenever there is some new technology, criminal will take this chance to commit crime. So we need to know everything. So this is another challenge for us as well. And also for cybercrime, everyone knows that it is not limited to a single location. It will be expanded to different countries, different locations, regions. So when it happens, we need the cooperation with the other law enforcement agencies. And this is quite challenging, because we need to establish the relationship to work together with the other law enforcement agencies. And that the last one is the sophistication of the criminals increase from time to time, and we need to catch up, and also we need to work on our case file. So we need to make a very big effort to equip ourselves in order to catch up with their knowledge and skills, in order to catch them. So actually, Technology Crime Division was established in 2001. And before we are named it as computer crime sections in 1993, consisting of 13 officers only. And because Hong Kong Police Force foresee that there will be a big challenge in technology crime and later cybersecurity as well. So we have gone through several occasions for expanding our manpower and our resources. So we have established the Cybersecurity Center in 2012 to focus on the cybersecurity matters, which include the detection and prevention of cyber attacks. So in Hong Kong Police perspective, we previously we defined technology crime as a one entity, but nowadays we separate. We want to separate the workload, and we want to separate our focus into two. One is technology crime. That means to commit crime using different technology, and cybersecurity, which is related more to cyber attacks. And then now this year, we have got the approval from the government to further expand our manpower and upgrade ourselves into a bureau format, which means we will be headed by more senior people so that they can focus on improving or enhancing our policy and also our impact to the society. So since the establishment of Cybersecurity Center, we have been doing a lot of work in cybersecurity with the society. So the first one is the critical infrastructure protection. We identified certain critical infrastructures to establish 24/7 direct contact, such that when they suspect that they are under attack or suspect that there are some cyber attack activities in their organization, they can contact us directly and seek assistance and technical support. And then we have a dedicated manpower, skillful officers to perform instant response. Whenever there is some massive cyber attack, just say the DDoS incident happened a few months ago, and we will have a group of people who can be dedicated to conduct investigation in high priority. So we have time to look into the logs and try to pick out the offenders. And then we have another group of people who can keep track or keep abreast of the development of the cybersecurity matters in the world. And also we learn the new tactics of the cyber attackers on how they perform the cyber attack and what traces can we follow to unveil their identities. And lastly, we also engage with the private or public sectors and other stakeholders to exchange our knowledge and learn from them as well. So in order to equip ourselves as most as we can. So when talking about critical infrastructures, because we have limited manpower, the manpower is never enough. So we have put our focus on 5 critical infrastructure sectors to protect, which is banking and finance, transportation, communications, public utilities, and also government. And we believe that because we can concentrate our resources to protect those critical infrastructures, to prevent them from being affected by the cyber attack, because whenever they get affected, they may bring serious impact to the society. And also we believe that after we establish this kind of relationship with the critical infrastructures, we can set out a role model for the other SMBs or other small companies as well. So this is the work we have done in the previous 2 years by the Cybersecurity Center of Hong Kong Police, such as knowledge sharing at cybersecurity related seminars, just like what I'm doing right now. And we have been providing enhanced cybersecurity, cyber attack investigation capacity to those victimized companies and those who may be victimized company before will feel our enhanced service. Yes, and also we will engage with other public and private sectors to exchange our knowledge and intelligence related to the global cyber threat landscape. So we will know more about what's happening in the world and what's happening in Hong Kong in order to give concrete advice to those critical infrastructures. And also we work with Hong Kong CERT. We are a big partner with each other because they have expertise on the global cyber security intelligence, and we have the responsibility to arrest some bad guys. So in order to do the whole things, we have already established some collaboration mechanism with each other to make the cyber security landscape more preferable for the investor in Hong Kong or some Hong Kong people. And there were two major events we organized for the critical infrastructures. The first one is the Cyber Security Symposium. We have invited some experts, technical experts, and some speakers from the cybersecurity companies to share the latest trend on cybersecurity to those critical infrastructure practitioners. And we have organized the cyber drill exercise for the critical infrastructures to, in order to examine what their policy, their equipment, their manpower, is there any inadequacy, and we will provide suitable advice for them after the drill exercise. And to repeat, we have already got the approval from the government to expand our Terrorist Crime Division to Cybersecurity and Terrorist Crime Bureau. And this is already listed in the 2014 policy address published by the CE Hong Kong. And it is estimated that our aims after the expansion, we will increase four main areas. The first one is to provide additional training on cybersecurity to our officers and also the frontline officers, because they will have more opportunities to encounter some cybersecurity related or terrorist crime related occasions to handle. So, and another thing is we will have more people to do long-term researches for the sake of our long-term development. And then we will have more resources to be put on investigating cyber crimes. And lastly, we can have dedicated teams to outreach in order to engage more strategic stakeholders to work together in order to exchange our knowledge and do better on the cybersecurity aspect. And the second part of my presentation is about what's happening in Hong Kong, say this year. And before I continue my presentation, I need to emphasize that I cannot tell you the details on each specific cases because they are still under criminal investigation. But I will use a general approach to let you know what's happening in Hong Kong, or just regard it as a cybersecurity trend for you to take a look. And the first one is DDoS attack. I think Owen Wong have already mentioned a bit about what's happening about the Hong Kong website being attacked by by DDoS in the past few months. And actually, what my focus is the modus operandi, the method the attacker used to launch the DDoS attack. So actually, in 2014, there are several prominent targets that were being attacked by DDoS, and they are news media, financial service company, government, political websites, or entertainment company. And the motives, previously, in previous years, most of the DDoS attackers were hoping to have a financial gain by extortion. But this year, quite special, we also observed that there are other motives, say political motives, or some attacker groups want to become more famous after the attack. And you may know about the evolution of social media is a tool for those DDoS attackers to announce their planning to the people of interest. So what we see is that they are starting to utilize the social media platform to tell them what's about the details of the attack. And they also share some hyperlinks or attachment to the people to join and launch the attack together on a specific target. So you can see from some of my screen captures that the attackers are doing this kind of tactics to launch a DDoS attack against specific target. And some of them will provide the LOIC, a simple network stress testing tool for the people who do not have enough technical knowledge to launch an attack. But after installing the tools, those people can just, by simple clicks and some inputs, can launch an attack to the others. And if they can group a large number of people to do the same thing, that will be equivalent to a DDoS attack. And then the DDoS attack launched by LOIC first, maybe some HTTP GET request flooding that we have seen in previous cases. And there are obvious signatures that we can be able to identify those attack traffics. Just like the packets with same size and same HTTP request for recursive appearance. And also we have some signatures that included in the HTTP header in order for us to identify those attack traffic. And then the other one is just very similar, HTTP post request flooding. And this is say I send out a post HTTP request and to the target and specify that the content link is a very large number. And then I send it very slowly. And in order to engage the resources of the target, this is the other approach used by the DDoS attacker. And then SyncFlood and UDP flood mentioned before. And what I want to say is that those attack methods are easily detected by firewall. And those layer 7 attacks are easily detected by the IDS if the setting is appropriate. Yes, because some of the targets, victimized company, did not set very good rules to catch those traffic, and that's why causing their being attacked. And a headache for us is that UDP flood and SyncFlood can be spoofed the IP, so we cannot catch the attacker by simply analyzing the network packet of the source IP address. Another thing is the pingback attack. I think everyone heard about WordPress. Many websites are developed by WordPress, but it have a default option turned on. It's called pingback. If this function is turned on, attackers can make manipulated instructions to those websites in order to change them to become an attack weapon. So this is a kind of attack method that is not a new one, but we see in 2014. And for DNS attack, I think there are many experts here, so I just very simply gone through this. We see reflection amplification attack through DNS server, and also we saw a flood of distinct random local address that refer to an existent zone on the target site to overwhelm the target's DNS server. So legitimate users cannot use the company's DNS to visit the website. And last, after the DDoS attack, I want to highlight two more attack methods. The first one is social engineering attack. We see that there are many occasions when some big events happened, say some political events or some disaster happened. Attackers will, after the happening of the incident, will send out some email or make some posts on the Facebook to attract the others to click on the links or download the attachment to see some exclusive news, something like that. And this is a very successful method to induce a lot of victims who download the attachment and get infected. Their computer get infected afterwards. And referring the Trend Micro's recently launched report, most of the attachment are Microsoft Office documents. And last but not the least, is the ransomware. I think all of you have heard about ransomware, and this year we have we have looked at an variants of ransomware called Locker. That's a message I want to pass to you is that when big organizations are focusing on their large systems, they may omit that they have a small department using a Synology network attached device and connected to the internet, and they may the NAS may be storing some important information. When they discover that the NAS already infected with some malware and the data cannot be recovered again. So when we are looking into the big picture, don't neglect the small organizations. And this is my last slide about the advice to the organizations. We see that there are more and more targeted attacks in the future and nowadays. And again, remember the Internet of Things. Small things connected to the Internet can be exploited as well. So for organizations, we advise them to discuss with their ISP on what they can do in case they encounter DDoS attack before they are actually being attacked. And explore your cyber defense solutions. There are many. And they may consider also to outsource their cyber security defense solution to the other companies so that they can have a more robust and more updated skill set to protect their company. And lastly, very important is that when you focus on protecting yourself, please please discuss with your vendor as well in case they have been attacked by cyber attack. Can they pass useful logs to them to forward it to law enforcement agencies for tracing the culprit? Because yes, you can mitigate one attack, two attack. You can never trace the source. You can never stop the other attack if you do not trace the source of. That means the cyber attacker. So many organizations omit about these important things because they just let the vendors to protect themselves without asking them to provide the logs for investigation. And that's all I want to share today. And thank you. And if you have any question, can move on to the panel session. Thank you.
Thank you, Horace. Thanks. Okay, here's come the last presentation and the closing keynote. So let's welcome Mr. Paul Mokaperis, Internet pioneer and inventor of DNS. So his topic is DNS and disruption. Paul, please.
Thank you very much. You're too kind. My topic is disruption in DNS. I think we've already heard what DNS is a little bit. I'll just basically tell you, I think it's about giving anybody or anything an identifier they can use to communicate with anybody else. I'm a little bit skeptical about approaches about making a list of all the bad guys or all the bad sites or so forth. I think really you have to turn the question around and say, how do I keep track of the people that I want to talk to, and how do I find new people I want to talk to? Because keeping track of all the bad guys, there's just too many of them. It doesn't work that way. But that's the end, pretty much, of what I have to talk about is security. I'm going to talk about disruption. That might be a bad word. I realize that the translation might not be exact, so I'm going to tell you exactly what I mean by that. If I was talking about racing horses, I would be talking about an overlay. And an overlay is where you say, the betting odds that I get, it may be 3 to 1, but boy, does it, I think those odds are right, and it's advantageous. If I was a financial planner, I'd talk about having alpha, which means that the reward is worth the risk. If I was a poker player, I'd be saying, boy, I have pot odds here. It may be that I don't expect to win, but if I win, I'm going to win a lot. So the real question is trying to figure out where it's worthwhile to take a chance and change our architecture and innovate. That's the kind of disruption I want. And I'm going to tell you, I want more of it, okay? I just spent a couple of days in DNS meetings, and it's very frightening for me, who is the inventor, to say, well, these guys are afraid to change anything. I think we need to be always willing to take calculated risks. There's another way of defining disruption, I get, a calculated risk. So today's agenda, I'm going to tell you a little bit about how we got here. How did we first get this disruption? And later possibilities for invention and where you might look to make these changes. Now, all distributed systems have three parts, and this is one of my favorite analogies. There's hardware, software, and configuration. And you might say, well, why are those the icons down there? Well, the answer is hardware is like milk. You always want the newest stuff. You know, nobody wants old milk. You know, and software is like wine. It gets better with age up to a point. Now, configuration, which is what the DNS is about, which is introducing you and I to everybody else and back and forth, I couldn't quite figure out. It's either death or taxes, okay? It's a bunch of work that you have to do, and you have to get it done. And until you get it done, nothing good is going to happen, but it's always a never-ending chore that you have to do. But then you get to live for a while before you get to pay your taxes or you get to die. But you can turn it around and say, it's the way you get to live. So, you know, what we're trying to do is to figure out how to make that easier. Why is it always so hard to deal with that kind of stuff? This is an American football analogy. And the guy in red is trying to catch the ball, and the other guy is trying to prevent him from doing that. When we build distributed systems, any system that we build, we typically face two challenges. One of which is we have some competition who does not want us to catch the ball, or they would prefer to catch the ball themselves. That's the nature of the business and the nature of the world we're in. There's always somebody out there who wants to do it better or different or whatever. But the other part of it is the complexity. I think the complexity is the enemy in distributed systems. You know, being able to deal with complexity and reduce it with either better tools or better understanding or a better model. A physicist would say if you have the right frame of reference, then you can solve most problems much more easily. An old physics professor of mine once said, you know, there's this whole business about how the Earth revolves around the sun. If you want to, you can do it completely the other way. It's perfectly okay to think that the sun goes around the Earth, but God, does the math get harder, right? Instead of like a circular orbit, it's all this strange stuff in crystal spheres and so forth. Having the right ideas and the right ways to look at problems often makes them fall apart. So did you use DNS? And this is mostly about how does the system grow. And I think the DNS has grown successfully. And if you're going to build some new system or some new add-on, you ought to think about dealing with the same kind of growth. Because DNS has grown in two different ways, one of which is the number of applications. So in this case, email. But then also over the years, it's gotten more and more features so that in the early days when you sent an email message, you did one DNS lookup to figure out where to send it. Now you do more DNS lookups to figure out whether or not you want to not send it. In other words, it's spam or there's something else wrong with it. Than you actually do to route the message. It's adapting to its environment, but it's grown in two ways. More applications, email is just one, but also you try and put more and more features and adapt it to society more and more. Now the web wasn't around when DNS got invented. So obviously this is a case where, gee, you add another application. The way you get more and more usage is you grow on two axes, more applications and more use within the application. With regard to the web, it was exactly the same story. You know, early on in the web days, it would be one DNS lookup to find the web server you were going to download stuff. And today, you know, there's a squillion, that's a technical term, lookups to find every little ad and every little icon and every other kind of mosaic piece to assemble the web. Of course, each of those pieces is also an opportunity for malware to come at you. You know, it's what people want. And so we're growing the individual size of the transaction along that axis. So who benefits from DNS? Well, you know, the conventional view is, well, it replaced that host table thing, which would be too big today if it was in a single file. But in reality, the important thing about the DNS is it allowed somewhere north of 100 million different organizations to manage their own future on the internet. They can put in their own configuration information and do what they want. So, you know, you're free to manage your configuration. I manage my configuration information. And that distribution, I think, is one of the big success stories about the DNS. I think one of the interesting things is there's probably around 10 billion domain names out there. And probably only a small fraction of those are public. A lot of it stays behind firewalls. The original specs were 110 pages. And, you know, I can't take credit for all of the DNS. It's totally unreasonable because since I did that first step, or those first two steps, many more people have added to it. Another kind of progress that we see, this is from Halloween, this is the GTLD space, you know, things like .com and so forth, as of October 31st of 2014. There was the 22 original GTLDs, those solid dark dots, right? And then there's all of these new ones that have been, the solid ones have been added and the hollow ones are in the process of being added. We're still trying to figure out some of the disputes out there. It's amazing to me that, for example, there was, I think, 3 different people that wanted to run .kosher, which is the, you know, the Jewish religious. And I figured, they'd never figure out who was going to be in charge, but they resolved that one. Meanwhile, who's going to run .mat, or the French word for wine, has not been resolved. So it's hard to tell which of these are actually going to come to pass, and which kind of disputes we've figured out how to deal with and which ones we haven't. So how did we first disrupt? You know, what was originally, how did I get to do this? One of the questions people always ask. Well, John Postel came into my office one day and said, we have about 5 proposals to fix this tent, this very simple structure that we have now. We want something more modern, like a parking garage or something, like I showed down below. But I didn't think that was the right way to do it, and nobody thought this was an important problem at the time. One of the key things is if you want to get to do something really interesting, if everybody else thinks it isn't interesting and you believe in it, I think you might be on the right track. You might be totally wrong, but it's really great when everybody is going to let you do what you want because that's not so important, Paul. Go ahead and do this domain name system. Don't worry about it. We're going to worry about how to send card images over TCP. My initial thoughts about this was I wanted to make something that was modular and expandable, but those architectures tend to be less than totally aesthetic. So, you know, how do you make something that's both elegant and modular and expandable, which is, I think, one of the challenges that we had. There's a lot of people who say that scaling is the only challenge we have in the internet today, and that's almost a defensible argument. You know, how do you make sure that it's still going to work when more and more people use it? So I'm going to tell you about the initial start of it all. The initial specs got done in '83. Root servers were running by '84. We had commercial sites in '85, and in '87 we had the standards pretty much done. So that was 4 years. Recently we've tried to add security, and we're about, what, 16 years into that now? I think it's actually longer than that, but at any rate, and we haven't got it done yet. So the pace of innovation has slowed a little bit, I think. Another thing is you might say, well, Paul, you were just such a genius. But in reality, I got a lot of things wrong. One of the things I had wrong is that this diagram over on the right was, I thought that it was immediately clear that the structure of how all DNS servers and resolvers and all this stuff, the architecture was clear. You would have a shared database, and I knew the format of that. And then we would have individual components like resolvers and name servers. And what we'd do is we'd standardize on the format of the database, and then anybody that built a better one of the modules on the side would throw the old one away and just plug it in and we could upgrade it. It'd be great. Nobody believed that. One of the things that actually really shocked me was when I found out from one of the new DNS system authors, well, you know, I was totally done with the implementation before I found out that the database was hierarchical, or it should be a tree structure. I mean, it's very odd, but at any rate, nobody has this. There's a lot of different starts and stops here about, but there's no interest in trying to modularize the way it was implemented. So you can't take a piece of bind 10 and easily graft it onto the side of whatever the check one is, and so forth and so on, which I think is a little bit of a disappointment. You know, I was kind of happy to see some of the work that's being done here locally, because they're incorporating some of the ideas that people have long told me are too crazy. And I'm going, oh, this is really great. I love the fact that somebody here in China is actually trying out the structure, which seems so obvious to me, and I've been told is so wrong for so long. At any rate, here's the family tree of DNS RFCs. Remember I said I don't deserve credit for all of it? If you see those tiny little 2 dots over on the left, those are the 110 pages that I wrote. And this is how many other people have added documents about how you implement things on top of it. I'm sorry the projector doesn't have the resolution so you can actually read the individual labels. This is actually done by a gentleman from Japan, and I thought, wow, that was, but you know, it just goes to show that to some extent, although, you know, I only did 110 pages out of the, I don't know, what, probably 10,000 pages, hard to know. You know, one of the successful aspects of the system is being able to build on top of it. And I think if you design something new, that's a criteria you ought to consider as well, is to let other people build on top of it. So what really happened? I wrote those 2 RFCs down at the bottom, and they were kind of the basement in the first floor. And then all these other people built this wonderful architecture on top, and it's still not done, and it's going on. So I want to thank, it was ARPA that sponsored me for doing a bunch of the original work. And so that's how we got a bunch of the original innovation going. So what happened a little bit after that initial thing? I sent in a proposal in 1989 to the National Science Foundation, and it said things like, DNS needs security. You know, and there's also this abuse, because actually before people did DDoS on purpose, they did it by accident. Because it's quite possible to misconfigure some stuff, particularly when you're putting 2 companies together and trying to put their namespaces together. You just create accidental DDoS. It's kind of like a chain reaction. Anyway, so I sent this into the NSF saying, we need to do all of this. What happened? Well, the feedback that I got back was there was 3 reviewers. One said it was excellent. One said it was very good, but it's not really research. And the other one said it's very good, but you know, could he please not do the researchy parts and just fix bind? Now, if you're familiar with the way the US research community works, you see this excellent, very good, that's called the kiss of death. That means no. Because, you know, unless you get at least 2 excellents out of 3, you know, it was very funny because these people were saying this stuff absolutely, positively has to get done and blah, blah, blah. And NSF was kind of conflicted because they had this kiss of death set of reviews, but they also had the people saying, this absolutely needs to get done. The internet absolutely needs it. You know, could you please just have Market Petrus fix bind? I have the reviews. You can read them if you want. But the result of it all was the National Science Foundation just could not decide. I would call them up and I would say, you're going to fund the proposal? They said, well, we haven't decided yet. I said, well, the review's done? And they say, yes. You have your budget? Yes. Well, we just can't decide. All right, now you might say, well, Paul, ARPA gave you the original money. Why didn't you go back to ARPA and get money from them instead? Well, the answer is that ARPA at the time wanted me to go to ARPA and be a program manager, and they knew if they gave me research money, I wouldn't do it. So they were sitting there going, NSF, please don't decide. NSF, please don't decide. So at any rate, I went to ARPA. So that was kind of the end of, you know, sort of US institutions funding research for this kind of stuff. It became a lot more distributed kind of approach rather than any kind of planned approach by the government. So let me talk to you about inventions and another guidance. about a couple of things. One of the ways to judge an invention is how many people it helps. So that polio vaccine down there has certainly helped almost everybody on the face of the earth. Although we've almost wiped polio out so that nobody, I mean, we would hope never to use that invention again if we could only figure out how to finish eradicating the disease. That's a problem. There was the moon landing and there was the Concorde, both great technical innovations, but we don't use them anymore. And then my favorite invention is down there in the lower right-hand corner. It took 40 years from the time that the first passenger paid to fly on a Zeppelin balloon, okay, until you got a jet airliner. 40 years to create the airline industry. 40 years after that, somebody patented the idea about putting wheels on a bag so you could roll it onto a plane, okay? The point I'm making here is that there's probably a bunch of inventions out there that are waiting for you guys to discover it that aren't like complicated quantum mechanics. They're like putting wheels on a bag and figuring out how to make something that we have out there just a little bit easier to use. So that's, you know, I'm going to talk about some complicated stuff, but it doesn't have to be complicated. In fact, it's better if it isn't. So what are the things, where are the places we might innovate? I think the DNS basic algorithms. The initial algorithms that are in there were purposely designed to be minimal because everybody at the time was saying, Paul, this is so complicated, it makes my head hurt. And so I tried to make it as simple as possible. So the way you find information in the DNS, well, you go to the root of the tree and then you have an algorithm that always gets you one level down. So it may not be an efficient way to get there. You may be standing next to the information all the way up and you come all the way back down again. But it was designed to always work, all right? Because while it's great to be able to chop the tree up, the namespace up into 100 million pieces, if you can't get to all 100 million pieces, you haven't done much good, all right? So I think that probably we ought to think about sort of some new algorithms for dealing with some of the basic parts of the DNS. Second thing is, and this is, all the DNS people that were in the last 2 days' meetings would hate me if they saw this bullet. I think Paul's probably vibrating a little bit down there. Can we kill backward compatibility? One of the things I love about Macintoshes were they were the first to get rid of floppy disks. You know, they get rid of all of this legacy stuff. Is there some way, the legacy stuff really is slowing us down. Is there some way we can sunset this stuff? Rather than worrying continuously about dealing with things that, you know, were bad ideas and it's time to put them to rest. And, you know, there's a technical thing about integrating authoritative and caching servers, and if anybody understands what I'm talking about, I'll happily talk to them after the meeting about why I think it's a good idea, even though that's not the popular wisdom. One of the things that's happened is that the rules are different yesterday and tomorrow. There's two columns, or one's yesterday, one's tomorrow. I'll let you figure out which is which. But, you know, datagrams were a wonderful way to be fast way back when, but they're also a wonderful way to do DDoS. So, you know, kind of the landscape has changed. People are worried about queries and privacy, and they're going to get rid of opportunistic caching. You know, the era where this is purely a scientific exercise and there isn't a large element of policy that's just totally mixed in is over. It's really, you have to design with both policy and technology in mind, I think, for the future. You can't surprise people about that anymore. ICN, there's a whole discipline about name-based networking or information-centric networking or content-centric networking. That's the wave of the future, at least in the US research community and in the European research community, and I know you have some here at, I think it's Tsinghua University. The only thing that these people can agree on is what's the name of their particular field, but it's all based upon using names as a basic primitive. Now, in the DNS world, it's hard for me to think about that as being too innovative because I thought we were doing that all along, but they've basically come up with a mechanism based upon, you know, an extra 30 years worth of time to think about it and, you know, a bunch of new ideas that's really much better. So to my way of thinking, there's two things we could think about doing here, one of which is killing off DNS and using their new idea, or one of their new ideas. Or the other thing is looking at these new systems and saying, how do we steal the good ideas from this system and move it into DNS? Last thing is a personal favorite of mine, which I call algorithmic contracts. There's all these discussions about who should rule the root zone and blah, 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 blah. I think we should just replace it with a distributed algorithm like Bitcoin, where we don't have to worry about whether or not ICANN is in LA or whether it's in Switzerland or Hong Kong or whatever, because it's just an algorithm. And we sit around, we figure out what the rules are for that algorithm, and then we don't have to worry about where it's located, because it isn't located anywhere, it's located everywhere. There's a bunch of different issues with that. Some of the problems that I think this kind of technology could be used for, besides just managing the root zone, is managing, well, other TLDs or other zones, but also things like portable phone number registries. They have kind of bizarre rules, at least in the US. I get to keep my portable phone number, I get to keep my phone number, but only as long as I agree to pay at least one phone company for it. So I could move it from phone company to phone company, and I supposedly own it. But if I don't have a phone company, if I'm not paying a phone company, I can't keep it anymore. The other jurisdictions have other rules, but the idea about making these things more easily manageable and portable property, just like the main names, I think would be great. There's the DNS root. It's not so big, so I think that managing it this way is indeed tractable. And one of the things is that the amount of data per zone is actually pretty small. One of the things I found out that's peculiar about it is that I wrote up this idea once upon a time and I sent it off to people. One of them happens to be the CTO of ICANN. And he said, Paul, I was reading this part here where you said that in general, we want a system so that everybody can see what requests are there and they can audit it and be sure that nothing unexpected has happened. I said there might be some cases where some of the information would be kept private and not public. He said, no, that's terrible, Paul. Everything has to be 100% in the public view. Nothing should be hidden. And then I said, well, that's okay. I think that maybe you're right. And then I went and talked to the way the people that run it now are running it, and everything's private. It's really kind of funny. The way that we think about how we would like to have these mechanisms work and the way they do work is 180 degrees out of phase, completely different. So I think the problem actually, I thought it was a technology problem, but again, it has a lot to do with how we want our policies to work. One of the things that surprised me is that the current policy is, supposing you're running the fictitious country of Fredonia, right? There is no Fredonia, right? Okay. Supposing you're in charge of Fredonia and you're a university professor and you've been managing the Fredonia domain for 5 years. And then the government says, we want it. They don't tell you that somebody wants to take it away from you. That's secret until they decide. So the policies here, again, and the technology have to be integrated. Thanks very much. I didn't get my 5-minute warning, so maybe we're ahead of schedule, or maybe I just ignored it. I don't know if we can take questions now or what the plan is.
Okay, thank you, Paul. So we need a few minutes for the setup. So next section is panel discussion and Q&A. So the topic is the challenges infrastructure and key stakeholders may face and foresee as the future threats from the internet. So the moderator is Chester, our chairman, Internet Society Hong Kong, and our panelists, two Paul, Pauls, and Andy Bean, Chief Information Officer from the Airport Authority Hong Kong, Eric Fan, the Chairman of Professional Information Security Association, Roland Zheng, Consultant, Hong Kong Computer Emergency Response Team. So now I pass the mic to Chester to moderate the section.
Hello. Yes, it works. All right. Okay. Well, it's good to see so many. I mean, everybody's still here. um, well, I guess we have heard. I guess Paul, the two Pauls spoke, and maybe I think this topic I will let the other panelists to give a little bit head start on their views about this topic, and then one thing before we start, I would like to remind you guys, don't be shy and grab this chance to ask your question, because we don't often have pioneers and experts like this here all the time. So okay. Well, first I think I guess we have no priority here. I know we do have QoS in the internet, but then for this panel discussion, let's just make it easy, simple, like Paul said, and have Eric. Maybe you want to start from the other side. So I want to give us a little a bit of your view on how we going to tackle, or what kind of threats are we going to face, I guess, critical infrastructure.
Well, let me try to recap if I guess one of your questions. So you are asking what is the threats we are facing, or?
Well, I'm just going to make it kind of simple for everybody to look at the problem as a member of, or as a stakeholder, of this thing, because we all are users of the internet. And obviously, some of us have a different role, I guess, in our day job or in our other commitments. But then, so that in the other commitments, we may have, I guess, different views on doing certain things. But as a security professional, yourself, maybe you have a view on how we might be feel that what we may be facing, and then how we may be able to protect ourselves from that.
I mean, compared to all gentlemen sitting here, I'm not a professional anymore, like Baby said. So I think right now we actually facing few problems. Is for what I'm trying to do in Hong Kong right now is try to emphasize DNS is very important in the cyber world. We all understand that the collectivity is the first place when we work out on the ISP. But then after the IP address, after the collectivity, what's about to enhance the speed of accessing the websites, or how we secure the websites we are not accessing the phishing sites? So I think domain name take a very important part. But honestly speaking, when I'm working in Hong Kong, I didn't really see any specialists focusing on the DNS security or the domain name world. So this is very hard for, I think, all of us who face the same question is, do the name server we're using at home is secure enough? What exactly mean for Google providing the resolver DNS? What compared to the ISP thing? So there's a bunch of questions that come into my head. But then for the the internet activities this year, we're starting to see many DNS attack to the domain name. But according to the CNN guide, the report said that go back to 2013, the August, the DNS attack is exactly happening in Hong Kong this year. So I think that is another transparency of the intelligence. So go back to me, I think all of us are very keen to know how we ensure the name server we're using do not have any problem, and how we secure the domain name we actually own right now. How can we protect the domain name from stealing by another bad guy? So for us, we know that, I think all of us know what is domain name, right? But I've got one question for you guys. Do anyone know how you can keep your domain name do not out of your pocket, which means cannot transfer to other registrar or registrant. Anyone know how to do this? Okay, good. So first question is, how anyone know the contact information of your domain name? Who is the domain owner? Who know that? Well, you can't. You are the expert anyway, so don't raise up your hand. And Ben, you guys can do this. So all of the audience, I want to know. I'm sure you guys got the domain name. So what is the information on who is the administrative contact, who is the brain contact? Who knows that? Raise up your hand. Hey, come on, Harry. Okay, no professional. So I guess other than the so-called professional, the previous guy or running registrar, so anyone don't know that. So that's the information. I think all of us don't exactly know how to secure your domain name, and that is the problem right now. If I'm the attacker right now, I won't do the DDoS to the to the infrastructure on premises. You guys have a very sophisticated IDS, DDoS appliance, but I can actually transfer your domain name to my server. So any traffic can route to my server. I get your login name, password. So the question is, go back and study how to transfer your domain name, how to lock down your domain name. I think that's a very, I'm sure two Paul will smile on me, but I think that's a very important part to secure your internet property at the first place. For the complicated structure like the DNS, the root zone, go back to the professional guys near me right now. So that's my sharing. I mean, in terms of the end user, in terms of what we're trying to educate right now in Hong Kong is how to secure the domain name, not the name server yet. I think that's this is the kindergarten level, but it's important as well.
Paul, you have something to add?
I was just kind of curious. I mean, one of the trends that I've noticed is that people don't use their own domain names quite as much. You know, everybody, I have a domain name that ends in gmail.com. No, I'm sorry, that's not really a domain name. So I was just curious, you're the security expert and I'm not. Do you think that the trend to using, gmail.com and Google DNS and so forth, moving all that stuff into Google's cloud is making people more or less secure?
Yeah, no, answering that. So, well, for sake of my conflict, I think that I will ask anyone don't using the gmail.com, but well, I think that this cannot be avoided for person who use Gmail heavily. But for the working purpose, I don't think the public email service provider like gmail.com or Hotmail or Yahoo, they can replace the personal domain. So I think the domain name itself can still maintain the reputation or can prove the identity of the business. But moving to cloud is another big topic that we can talk for like 2 hours. So I think we try to skip the cloud. But personally, again, I believe the cloud that make change of our life. But for the cloud security, I think everyone here they need to be concerned about their own security. Like why you need to put your photo on the cloud so casually? Why don't you keep in your own server, something like that? So that's the question: why you need to put on the cloud, but not simply trust the cloud security guy.
Yeah, I was very amused when the other Paul was talking about, mail servers and so forth, because I recently got an email from a friend of mine who he happens to have a Gmail account, and it was congratulating me on winning a I think it was a Nigerian lottery. Man, there was all this money and so forth and so on. And I went to send him back a message saying, "Hey, John, you sent me this message, and I don't think you really, I think you've been hacked. You probably ought to change your password and do all of that kind of stuff." And I was getting used to the idea that I would have to explain to him what getting hacked meant, and yes, I know he didn't really do it, and so forth and so on. When I got an immediate bounce back saying, no, you can't send that message through Gmail. I'm going, what? It came to me from Gmail, but I can't forward it back to the user saying, I don't think you meant to send this, and you probably didn't, so stop. So, it's really kind of funny about how some of the security mechanisms we have sort of don't work with other security mechanisms. And how, if I didn't have that thing called a phone, I don't know how I would have been able to tell him the message that he was sending out. And I think telling him that you sent a message you shouldn't have would have been a little bit vague. So, I don't know. As a user, the thing that scares me, and maybe you can explain to me, is I have this feeling that whenever I click on a link, I'm like playing Russian roulette. Okay, that something bad can happen anytime I click on a link. And there's, it doesn't matter. And so I kind of like wondering, what are you security guys been doing if that's true?
Well, I think that especially in Hong Kong this year, it's not only the email, even the instant messaging. I doubt who else sent me the link because as Horace mentioned that there are one-click DDoS. Someone sent me the link. When I open that, probably generates a lot of DDoS attack traffic. So I think this question right now is not only about the email, is how we can trust the link that's sent from other people. So maybe Paul, you talk about the domain name forensics during your presentation. For me, I think this is a very good detective or reactive approach, but any use case right now is already implements the preactive detect approach of the domain name. Like if I receive URL like isol.hk and then web.aspx, is it any mechanism that we already can detect that isol.hk is a phishing domain or a malicious domain in a very quick time or approach?
So there are many feeds of security information telling you this is malicious, this is an indication of compromise, this has a bad reputation. And there are quite a few online databases. We have somebody from the Spam House project in the audience, so that would be an example of where you can test the reputation of a potential network partner before you agree to accept their traffic, or maybe even before you agree to accept their connection. And I referred to that at the end of my remarks during my talk, where there is there's some merit in this approach if we can get our response time down to a small number of seconds, and if we can add more categories of maliciousness rather than just binary, this is a good or this is a bad reputation. We can sort of talk about it in shades of gray, and we can talk about it not just in IP addresses that might be trying to send you mail, but also name servers that maybe they're just known to be bad no matter what the name is, no matter what the IP address is. If this name server is sending it to you, we know that one belongs to a criminal, so you should reject it. There's a lot of work being done in that area. And the difficulty that we have is, as an industry, as a security industry, we're still sort of stuck in the what I think of as the punch card era, where we put things into files and then we exchange those files, or we move those files around in our data processing systems, and then we process them in arrears. So you might have a file that contains a log of email or a log of packets that were received for the last hour or the last day or something like that, and you won't even begin to analyze it until you reach the end of that hour or the end of that day, which means that you have no chance of responding to a security threat in a matter of seconds. You're counting on them being as slow as you, and they know that, and they aren't. So I think one of the biggest single changes that I am pushing for, both in my professional life and my personal life, is to get everybody to live in the moment and stop dealing with big data as a gigantic database that after I'm done dumping everything into it, I will then run some queries and find out what's there. Because that won't work. The bad guys know that we're going to do that. What you have to do now is think about this as a sort of a running problem, where there's kind of data flowing in, data flowing out, triggers that occur in real time. And that is going to start looking more like real-time intelligence process rather than an in arrears data process.
Okay, well, how about Roland now? Eric tried to deny himself as a InfoSec professional, but since you pay by you work at Hong Kong Cert and you pay by Hong Kong Cert. I don't think you can escape that now. So what's your take on on
Yes,
you know, the threat and all that, especially, you know, the police and the, I was you also mentioned you, I mean, Hong Kong Cert as the, you know, critical partner in, you know, tackling threats, cyber threats. So what's your take?
okay. We all work in Hong Kong Cert, and I would like to share some new trend on the DDoS attacks. Besides the traditional, they use the PC as the attack tools. They also exploit the embedded Linux box, such as your home router or some TV box, to conduct the DDoS attack to the DNS server. We see some case on some home router who was compromised and opened the telnet port. Telnet is not default opening, but we found some of old model wireless AP may have some vulnerability, so that they can exploit this vulnerability to take over the router to conduct the attack. This is some of the recent trend we see in the recent report. So we can foresee that in the coming of IoT century, a lot of the device will connect to the internet, but the authentication or protection is still very weak.
Okay, so you're saying the threats, or the future threats will be coming from, well, basically everything around us.
Yes.
Okay, that's comforting. Okay, well, Andy, so now I'm putting great faith on you so that our two, you know, prominent speakers from overseas can get home safely after this. Just kidding. But, you know, so what was, I mean, how do you, I mean, you obviously, an international airport like the Hong Kong, you know, is critical infrastructure, no matter how you look at it, and you may be facing, you know, a lot of things that is, you know, I mean, other than the weather, other than, you know, but then, you know, things, a lot of your critical systems are running on, you know, IT systems, IP-based systems even. So what do you say?
Well, I mean, well, first of all, I thoroughly, I'm very impressed and thoroughly enjoy these speakers, because I think it's probably the best time to be in IT now, because if you just look at the topics that have been covered, we have, you know, we have technology, we have scholastic research, we have politics, we have crime, and we have probably talk about ransomware, we talk about money. So I think now, because I mean, people have been talking about digital lifestyle, and I was so glad that Paul pulled up that slide with the Concorde and also the luggage there, because that has some relevance to us. Because just to take the example of that luggage, we have been working on, like, you know, Hong Kong Airport is one of the first to put in RFID on the baggage, so that it goes through our system sort of very fast and automated. And this year we are starting to look into things like permanent bag tags and how that can help relieve the passengers' you know, stress level on, you know, locating the luggage. What it means is, we also talked about, you know, with internet, at least from my point of view, we're not just talking about emails and websites, right? We talk about Internet of Things. And just to quote a couple of examples, you know, in the airport, you know, we worry about people sort of amassing at the airport. So we're working with airlines to see how we can encourage more people to do internet check-in. I mean, a lot of the younger population definitely won't go for anything other than internet check-in. In the old days, when, you know, I was younger, you know, we line up in front of counters. So that's one example whereby technology and internet can be put to use. The second example is the flight information display. You know, if people can remember, way back when we were, you know, at the airport opening, we have some problem with our information display. So because everybody rely on those screens to get the flight information. But now that, you know, not only us, we put out our mobile apps, like, I think 2 years back, but, you know, people are relying on the apps to look at the latest information of flight. And in fact, the resolution on that phone is much better than our screens, right? And we've been talking, recently we've got the go-ahead to proceed with some prep work on our third runway, our new runway system. And one topic did come up, which is the idea of a future airport. What would be a future airport like? And how do we get in the technology infrastructure, utilizing, RFID, using our Internet of Things, using whatever means, mobile phones, to make that travel experience different. We want to reinvent that airport experience. So I think, of course, the security part is definitely one important element of it. But of course, we also talked about, it's not just sort of protection and protection. It's how to enable, how to make people, how to make things connect, to make use of the technology for the advancement of the betterment of civilization. I think that's the main topic here. And I think there were some very good ideas about reviewing on maybe not just relying on, stuff that have worked in the past, but maybe to also look forward to see how we can reinvent based on the capability that we have.
Okay, thank you, Andy. Now, before we go further, I'd like to remind you also that besides our panelists here up on the podium, we still have Ms. Horace Lau from the Hong Kong Police Force and also Ben from Hong ILC. So they're also here that they could answer questions that you may have for them based on their presentations or other things that may be on your mind. So okay. Well, I guess one thing I like to ask self is like now when I started in this industry, we were facing attacks. I guess basically just at the network level, and then later on we were kind of a few years back, or maybe 5-10 years back, we were kind of looking at application security. Web applications were being attacked, or kind of people were looking into that area, or heavily looking into that area. And now, like I think like Horace was mentioning about recent incidents, especially this year that we have seen in Hong Kong with the attack on Pop Road and also the media company, the Apple Daily. The attacks have been heavily focused on DNS vulnerabilities or attacking the DNS systems. So do we have what it takes to kind of protect us from that in a relatively short time, or really we have to be kind of sitting duck for a while until we kind of revamped, like Paul was saying about we have to we need to have that disruption happening and to revamp what we have.
I'll tell you my theory. Way back when, people used to say that the value of the internet was that you could talk to more and more people, and that the value of the internet went up as the square of a number of participants, which basically means the ability for any particular individual to talk to any other. As you added more and more individuals, there were many more paths, and that sometimes called Metcalfe's law. But if the person you can connect to is a hacker or a DDoS source, that's like negative work. So, I think that, in the presence of an adversarial environment, whether it's crime or whatever, what you have to do is you have to be able to limit your interactions to those that you trust. That's the basic problem that you have in your new automobile, by the way, and that is, that if you go put in, a new DVD player in your car, it can tell your brakes to turn off, or tell your accelerator to turn off. The car bus standard just says, oh, send a command, and if you can get the checksum right, it'll be believed at the other end. okay? Come on. So, people have always been telling me about the DNS and how, Dan Kaminsky found this flaw in the DNS which allowed him to attack it. And I say, well, he figured out how to open a door that not only didn't have a lock, it didn't even have a handle, which is kind of a push door. And so I think right now our ability to secure things depends upon our ability, and I'm sorry because I heard an expert say something completely different a little while ago, is to make a secure perimeter so that companies make VLANs per application or whatever in order to segment their enterprise. In my computer, I have one virtual machine that I'm sure is infected, but that's where I go when I'm clicking on a random link that I'm not sure what it is, and I want to know what's there. So that virtual machine is totally toast, I'm sure. Now, I do my airplane reservations in a different virtual machine. But our ability, I think, to secure things is unfortunately related to our ability to restrict access to a smaller number of parties. And that's unfortunate because, I would like to share with the whole world and be able to roam free and so forth and so on, but it doesn't work that way. And maybe we could figure out some way to innovate around that problem. But today, I think that your security, whether you like it or not, depends upon your ability to create perimeters and restrict who's inside that perimeter, whether you're doing it with crypto or VLANs or whatever. So I'm like really upset that, my car bus is going to be connected to the phone network so somebody can call me up and turn off my brakes. Or, I think the solution for that is that they, just as I went to a financial services conference, and there was one company that was talking about we need to be able to scale our network. And I was going, gee, probably means more gigabits, more servers. And no, what he meant was he had 50,000 different applications he had to run at this bank. And he was trying to figure out how many different VLANs he needed to have in order that there was sort of a limited amount of sharing. And that, in some cases, if this application got hacked, there were 4 others that were vulnerable. So I don't know, the art of constructing these perimeters and figuring out how to define them and define them without errors, because obviously if you screw up, it's not secure at all. I think more perimeters rather than the perimeterless network is the way that people have found security so far. I'm sorry, I've talked too much.
Let me offer a more specific answer, because PVM is in the 1% of people who understands those issues with regards to like having a different VM to run certain commands in, and then of that 1%, he is in the 1% of that who's actually willing to take the actions that he understands are necessary. The rest of us are quite lazy. So let me give you 4 more specific answers to the question sort of related to the DNS attacks that are happening now. What can we do? What steps can be taken? So first, what PVM said about the CAN bus in the car is also true of the internet itself. Pretty much anywhere on the internet, you can transmit a packet having a source IP address of your choice, which means that if I wanted to DDoS PVM, I could send each of you a packet claiming to be from him, and you would answer him. And I can do that many times per second, and eventually I can cause his link to be congested so that he can get no work done. And this is really easy to do. So every time you read about a 400 gigabit attack against an online gambling house or spam house or something like that, it's this. This is the problem that is allowing that to happen. The reason that it happens has to do with economics, and I'd love to talk about that, but let me focus on DNS. It's happening because the destination address of a packet is operationally relevant. In other words, if you put the wrong destination on a packet, it won't get where it's going, so you as the sender are incented to make that true. You as the sender might be a bad person and thus be incented to make the source untrue, but the destination really has to be true. And so the whole system is designed around the idea that destinations are going to be made correct. And the there's nothing in the system that prevents source addresses from being incorrect. That can be done, but it can only be done at the edge. In other words, once a packet gets into the internet core, that big cloudy thing that's on all of our whiteboards, then it legitimately could have come from anywhere, and you can't detect a forgery. But at the ISP of origin, or the company of origin, or whatever, whatever the edge looks like, it's very clear that this either is or is not a local source address. But there's no incentive at that edge to prevent that forgery from leaving that network. If we want to create that incentive, it will be through either an insurance regime, an ISO 27000 regime, regulation, treaty, law. It'll be something that causes people to do something that costs them money and makes them no money, but then makes the rest of us safer. And we know historically what those things look like. They don't look like the invisible hand of the market. So, put pressure on your own IT departments, on your suppliers, on your customers, on your regulators. Put pressure everywhere you can to get people to turn on what's called source address validation. And here I want to reach out to my friend Andrei Robichevsky, who is part of the ISOC sort of core team, and he's putting together a project similar in scope to Deploy 360 that is on this specific issue. And ISOC is going to attempt to get people to think about this, get some action to be taken. And I would advise both ISOC Hong Kong and the rest of anybody who's not a member, please join. It's a good idea. But if you don't join, then please figure out what ISOC is doing here, because source address validation, if widely practiced, would make all of us safer. So that's one more cogent answer. Another thing to do is what we call response rate limiting in your DNS servers. Right now, when you create a name server, let's say the .hk name servers or the .cn name servers or .com, any authority name server where content enters the DNS, you want that to be as strong as possible. You pay as much money as you can possibly budget, and you buy as many computers and load balancers and internet connections and backup power connections. You make a huge investment there because that's your primary business, and if anything happens to it, you're out of business. And the problem is that the more you invest, the better you are as a DDoS amplifier. So when these packets I mentioned that have these forged source IP addresses enter the network through these insecure edges, they're coming for you. They're coming for your name servers so that you will receive a tiny little packet that you think came from some victim, and you'll send them a wonderfully large response packet, which they did not solicit and cannot avoid. If anything, they might call you and say, please stop DDoSing me, and your answer would be, you mean you want .hk to stop answering questions from your network? And they're going to say, no, I need to see .hk. Well, then stop sending me the queries. Well, I'm not sending you the queries. Somebody's spoofing those. Well, I can't tell they're spoofed by the time they reach me. So this really is us on the internet sort of standing there trying to push on a rope and expect some change to occur. So anyway, that's the next thing to do, is if you're running a high-performance authority name server, please turn on response rate limiting. And so there's some trivial math that costs very little CPU time, and it's had no false positive reports. It's in bind, it's in NSD. It's probably in nominum, I don't know. But you can detect these forgeries at a authority name server, and you can simply avoid answering them. That makes you less of a danger, and it also saves you money on your outbound transit. That would be number two. Number three, you should investigate what I was talking about earlier called response policy zones, RPZ. Find a way to, and Nominum's been selling technology like this for 10 years now, so I am not the inventor of the idea, but Nominum's is not an internet standard, whereas I hope mine will be. But in any case, find out what technology you have in your recursive name servers that you can feed with policy from the security industry that will help you not resolve certain things that have no purpose in the world except to hurt you and your customers. And again, Nominum has something like that. Bind has an open thing called response policy zones that is like that. There is a dozen security companies who would like to sell you content that will help you not resolve dangerous things, and that would be number three. And I forgot number four.
It's fine.
Yeah, I think one of the things that you also ought to keep in mind is that if you have a corporate intranet and you want to make that secure, I think there's light at the end of the tunnel. I think you can come pretty close there. You still have the problem about, well, somebody, takes their laptop outside and goes to the local porno site and gets more than they bargained for and brings it back inside. I mean, you still got to deal with that, but you've got a manageable size problem. You can indeed configure your DNS in your intranet so it will continue to work regardless of what happens on the outside. And I've done this with a couple of large companies, and they said, no, we have to have access to the root. You don't. You can set up your own internal stuff so that it will work regardless of whether somebody cuts a fiber optic cable in the Indian Ocean or whatever. Okay, so being self-sufficient within your organization is one of the steps that you should take. Of course, that doesn't help you if your business is selling to the outside world, or at least for that part of the business which is, interacting with, selling to the outside world. There, you got to be out on the internet, and you're exposed to all this other stuff. And the measures Paul talked about are things you should do, but it's a much harder space to defend because they can come at you from many more angles. But figure out how to be secure internally first.
I remembered number 4. If you're running a recursive name server, which if you have a small plastic box feeding you DSL or cable modem or wireless service in your house, you are, even if you didn't know it. If you're running a recursive name server for your house, for your company, for your customers, please make sure it is not reachable from the global internet, because that's another place where those 400 gigabit attacks go to be amplified. And you really want to avoid answering queries. You're essentially offering free service to people who are outside your network, and you should avoid that. Just put a firewall around it. Make sure that you only answer queries that came from your employees or from your customers.
Thank you. How about the floor? Do we have any questions for any of our speakers? Yes.
I have a question.
Sure.
What Paul said, I mean, it rings true to us. I mean, we have a airport community connection, which we want to sort of remain private. But there's a lot to talk about public cloud services, like everything goes up software as a service, so you use the names that you mentioned, Google, Microsoft, whoever. So how does this work? I mean, if we go outside and we are facing with all these other things, does it mean that enterprise or people who cares about security maybe should think twice about going to public cloud?
Well, we sort of started to talk about cloud stuff at the very start here. I think that it's a calculated risk, and the cost of cloud service is often, very favorable. But it, in the words of Stevie Wonder, when you believe in things that you don't understand, then you suffer. It's if you can't understand exactly what the cloud service is giving you and so forth, you're taking a risk. I love cloud service. I love this distributed computation. This sort of distributed computing has been my life's work. But you have to understand what's going on, and if they can't explain the risks to you, and you care a lot about what's happening, I'd worry a lot. If what you're doing is, not so risky, well, maybe you're okay. But, it's a different set of risks. It's not a panacea.
So I would answer more strongly, no, don't do it. And my reason is a number of things. Economically speaking, cloud providers are in competition with each other. That means that their incentives are time to market, cost of sales. Those are the things they can control. Quality, security, does not make them more competitive. Availability does. Uptime, performance, total cost to you make them more competitive, and so they optimize for those things, whereas the quality of their internal implementation and how quickly they would patch after a vulnerability was discovered or something like that That does not make them more competitive. They don't optimize for it. And there is this belief, not just that your total cost of operation will go down if you move your stuff out of your own data center and into the cloud, but your total cost of operation as reflected in your own payroll will go down because you no longer have to have experts who understand how those systems work. You're able to sort of buy the shiny object that is off in the distance somewhere on the assumption that they understand how it works. Let me assure you that they don't, and that you cannot win by dismissing those employees who have those clues. You have to preserve that, and to some extent that means you have to give them a local playground where they can make their local expertise relevant to you, because one of the most important single things that any of us can do is to have an investment feedback loop where if we pay more money somehow, we invest more capital in something, it will change our experience. It either saves us money, makes us money, whatever it does, it gives us power over our situation. When you outsource and when you dismiss those technical clues from your staff, you're giving up the ability to make investments that make a difference in your experience and in your company's experience. And I don't think that you can keep the hand on the tiller of your own success unless you have some infrastructure and some clue inside your own four walls.
Great, thanks. Any questions? Oh, yes.
Thank you. We're having a great talk. I would like to ask, we know that there are like tens of gigabytes, hundreds of gigabytes of attacks coming in this few months, this few years. So like for a company, so for like 3 years, 5 years, so how should I defend for my company, and what steps that I can probably estimate that how much amount of attack you could possibly come in this few years, so that I can get the defense on, and then what else can I do to foresee what kind of attacks that would bring my organization down?
Oh, by me, okay. Well, I think this is a very difficult question for us, especially we don't know whether you are the next target of being attacked. So at first I would say if you're being attacked, you're probably doing something right or probably doing something wrong. So go to the bright side. If you're doing something right, it's talking about you launch some application or you launch some very fancy websites which draw lots of traffic, which is a happy problem. So you can have many choice to invest. So a little bit of the question is, go back to Paul. He got a lots of technical suggestion about how to scalable the DNS. How to scalable the domain name server, how to make your domain name more capable to answer the queries. We actually got few choice here. We've got Akamai, we've got HAIRC, we've got some local registrar. So in case specific on the domain name, you can go for some expert here. But for investment, honestly, I think based on Warren and based on Horace sharing, the attack into Hong Kong is huge, especially this year. I think neither none of them, I mean the CIO or CISO can estimate beforehand. So trying to get updates from the intelligence, like from the seminar organized by ISOT or PISA, we can have many sharing, like for the previous media websites, how can they handle the DDoS attack? What is the latest trend of that? So get the intelligence, be prepared if you launch some very good application or very good websites, what can you do next? And go back to the cow question. What I want to say is, I attend many seminar, or I've been doing many speaker, but today I want to make sure there are no Microsoft people, no Amazon people here. Okay, no, good. So first of all, make sure what you exactly bought from them. So if that's a sales talk, they will tell just hand over your application, hand over your website to my cloud. But honestly, you need to understand what is their service standard or what is the scope. Some of them, they actually don't care about your OS, they don't care about your stack, they don't care about your DB, but all of us understand that three things is very important to make your application sustainable. It's not only telling how much bandwidth you got to your data center, but how your application design. For what's our experience is we I mean, people in Hong Kong are still having a long path to learn the threat test, to know how the application can handle not only the DDoS, even though the pulse or I mean the drastic traffic to your application. So don't only trust the sales talk. Ask about if I want to handle like 50,000 of per second of the transaction, what I can do. Give some open question. So that's my answer to you. Yeah, hope I can answer that.
Yes, I agree with Eric. It's a difficult task on to protect your company. For example, around 2 weeks ago, several worldwide news media was defaced. The cause is due to the CDN provider. The CDN provider, the domain name account was headed by the hacker group called SEA. So it's not your problem. It's your if one of your service provider have vulnerable, you still be hacked. This is the real case.
So let me add just a little bit, because your question mentioned DDoS volumes, more or less what to provision for in order to withstand the next generation of attacks. That turns out to be the wrong question, because no matter how strong you are, there is a way to make a botnet stronger than that. So I know that Google regularly gets multi-hundred gigabit attacks, and they have figured out a way by investing billions of dollars in infrastructure around the world, not just for servers, but for interconnections and dark fiber between cities and so forth. And so they probably feel like they've got DDoS pretty well covered. I can't spend that much, and I don't think anyone in this room can spend that much. So what we do is, rather than fighting harder, we fight smarter. So for example, if you have a CDN provider, make sure that, of course, you want to make sure you audit them and that you don't have credential theft as a possibility, but you'd like your CDN provider to have a DDoS option. Some do, some don't. And you want it to be that when you get DDoSed, you can sort of, maybe they'll even tell you, by the way, you're getting DDoS, so that you get detection out of the deal. But you certainly want to have the ability to say, I would like to pay extra to continue to be reachable while I am being DDoSed. And they will use all sorts of smart tricks, like dumping traffic in the HKIX rather than having to deliver it to you and dump it at your edge. Or they will load share, they'll anycast, they will change your DNS records, they'll change your routing advertisements, they'll do all kinds of stuff that will cost you money, but at least, in general, a DDoS stops if it's ineffective. And so, if you want to be able to do what I said earlier, to make an investment that will change your experience, then make sure that every one of your providers is part of your emergency planning, and that they all have an option to sort of help you out there. And beyond that, if you want to look, if you're looking for a mid-level solution where you can, in some sense, increase your running costs to give you more options as far as who your vendors are going to be. I started the Palo Alto Internet Exchange back in 1995 or so. It was called PAX, later became Equinix. And one of the things that I was hoping for in that effort was to give people a place to buy some rack space that would then place them within local cross-connect distance of dozens of different transit providers, as well as potential peers, so that they could drive some economy of cost and say, well, okay, you want to charge me X dollars per megabit, your competitor's offering less than that, do you want to match that price or not? As opposed to putting your stuff into a commercial data center that only has that commercial data center as a transit provider, where you pretty much have to take whatever price they give you. So you do have some structural opportunities there, but no matter what you do, unless you can invest like Google does, you will not be bigger than the attacks that can come at you.
Thank you, Paul. Well, I'm afraid I have to end this today's summit, because it's already 5:50, and we have a shuttle bus leaving outside to 6 o'clock. Yeah, so I leave the rest to Ping.
So thank you, Chester, and thank you all the speakers and panelists. So maybe our photographer, where is he? Oh, okay. So let's take a picture together. Yeah, you can stand, or maybe stand because we have took a lot of. So thank you, all the speakers, I guess. Okay, wow. So before you leave, just small note. So please feel free to fill in the feedback form. So this event, we are trying to do it annually, and we try to change it to June, yeah, May or June next year. So yeah, and maybe who you want us to invite to come, definitely we will try. And also remind you, shuttle bus will depart from where you get off earlier this afternoon at 6 p.m. So you have a little bit time to catch our speakers if you want to. So now here comes to the end of today's event. Thank you all of you for joining us, and thank you all the speakers to spend their time to join us. So I hope you all enjoy today's event and have a nice day and see you in our next event. Thank you.